The 90s took thrillers into darker, grittier territory that made studios second-guess their decisions. These films stripped away the glamour and served up small-town corruption, moral compromises, and characters so desperate they'd sell out anyone to survive. Directors pushed boundaries with graphic violence, sexual tension, and stories that didn't fit the typical Hollywood formula, while actors delivered intense performances in productions that faced distribution struggles and marketing confusion. Studios wanted clean heroes and happy endings, but these thrillers had other plans entirely. Red Rock West turns a case of mistaken identity into a Wyoming nightmare where every character wants someone dead and nobody's telling the truth. An ex-Marine named Michael drifts into a tiny town desperate for work, gets mistaken for a hitman hired to kill the local bar owner's wife, and instead of committing murder, he warns her, which kicks off this insane spiral where she offers him money to kill her husband, who turns out to be the town sheriff. Cage spent the entire shoot wandering between takes in those remote Wyoming locations, channeling genuine isolation into Michael's confusion, having late-night script sessions with director John Dahl, where he'd question every line reading. Crew members talked about how Cage's unpredictable energy made every scene feel dangerous, which gave the film this tense atmosphere that studio executives absolutely hated when they saw the final cut. The real chaos started when those same executives declared the film unmarketable because test audiences couldn't handle the moral ambiguity. So instead of a proper release, they quietly dumped it into a handful of theaters and basically killed its distribution. Walsh clashed constantly with the Dahl brothers over his character's dialogue, insisting on rewrites that derailed the shooting schedule, while Cage joined these tense sessions that crew members described as electric. The original cut got butchered with edits that removed the film's darkest moments, and only years later did boutique companies rescue the real version, turning what Hollywood considered a failed experiment into a cult masterpiece that influenced every indie noir that followed. U-Turn transforms a broken-down car in Arizona into a descent through hell populated entirely by lunatics, liars, and murderers who all want a piece of the same desperate gambler. Sean Penn plays Bobby Cooper fleeing mobsters when his car dies in this sun-scorched town, where Jennifer Lopez as Grace propositions him to murder her husband Jake for insurance money, dragging Bobby through double crosses until everyone betrays everyone in the merciless desert. Penn prepared by living in small Arizona towns for weeks, refusing to socialize with the cast, isolating himself so completely that Stone said Penn would pace for hours before violent scenes, channeling exhaustion that made Bobby's desperation feel terrifyingly real. The explosive drama came from Lopez clashing with Stone over how he directed her character's sexuality, with Lopez arguing on set that his approach felt exploitative and demanding rewrites during intimate scenes, tensions escalating until she threatened to walk off entirely. These standoffs forced shooting delays and negotiations between her team and producers, with Stone eventually admitting her challenges sharpened the performance, even though crew members remembered those battles as the most intense moments of the shoot. The controversy exploded on release when politicians demanded bans in certain regions, calling the film's violence irredeemably corrupt, with critics split between calling it a masterpiece and condemning it as morally bankrupt. Cable networks refused to air the film for years, while rumors spread that graphic sequences got cut for overseas prints, but it found its cult audience among noir fans who celebrated Stone's uncompromising vision, cementing its status as a polarizing artifact that still divides audiences today. The hotspot begins like a classic American noir, relocated to the sticky heat of small-town Texas, where every smile hides a secret and every favor comes with a price. Don Johnson plays Harry Maddox, a restless drifter who takes a job at a used car lot and quickly notices how careless the local bank is about security. When the volunteer fire brigade doubles as the bank staff, he sees a simple opportunity: start a fire, rob the vault while they rush to the blaze, and disappear. The plan works until guilt forces him to rescue a trapped man from the flames, turning his anonymous crime into local gossip. That single decision pulls him into the lives of two women who represent opposite versions of temptation. Jennifer Connelly plays Gloria, a shy loan officer trapped in her own scandal, while Virginia Madsen plays Dolly, the owner's wife whose charm is as dangerous as the pistol she keeps hidden in her purse. Behind the camera, Dennis Hopper directed with the same volatility that defined his reputation. He became fixated on Connelly's performance, often discussing her expressions and presence more than the script itself, creating an uneasy energy that bled into the scenes. Johnson and Madsen clashed repeatedly during the erotic confrontations. Hopper encouraged them to improvise, arguing over boundaries and motivation, while the director pushed for whatever feels real. Crew members recalled entire days lost to rewrites and tense standoffs, yet Hopper insisted the discomfort gave the film its charge. When it opened, moral watchdogs condemned its explicit content and several theaters refused to show it, labeling it indecent. Critics were divided between calling it pulp and praising its craft, but later re-evaluations recognized how Hopper used heat, confinement, and silence to build one of the most quietly intense noirs of its era, a film about desire turning into entrapment both on screen and off. Strange Days unfolds in a chaotic Los Angeles on the final nights of 1999, a city suffocating under corruption, violence, and technological addiction. Ralph Fiennes plays Lenny Nero, a former police officer who now sells illegal playback recordings, virtual memories that allow users to feel someone else's experiences directly from their brain. When a disc surfaces containing the brutal murder of a woman named Iris, Lenny becomes entangled in a conspiracy linking entertainment, politics, and the police force he once served. His only ally is Mace, played by Angela Bassett, a bodyguard and single mother whose strength and conscience keep Lenny alive as the city slides toward riot. Director Kathryn Bigelow shot the film like an urban documentary from the future, staging real nighttime chaos on downtown streets filled with smoke, helicopters, and hundreds of extras. Bassett trained for months to perform her own stunts and endured exhausting overnight shoots that left her bruised and drained. Yet her exhaustion became the raw emotion the role demanded. Ralph, known then for his refined stage work, struggled with the role's desperation until Bigelow insisted he abandon precision and embrace confusion, filming long takes that captured genuine fatigue and fear. The film's most controversial sequence, a crime witnessed through the killer's own recording, sparked censorship battles worldwide, with some territories demanding cuts and others refusing release entirely. Activist groups accused the movie of glorifying violence, while critics debated whether it was prophetic or irresponsible. Its theatrical run collapsed under the backlash, but in later years audiences recognized what Bigelow had attempted, a visceral warning about voyeurism, technology, and power that predicted the moral conflicts of the digital age. Today, Strange Days stands as a daring fusion of science fiction and social noir, whose urgency has only grown with time. One false move begins like a standard crime thriller, but slowly turns into something far more personal and unsettling. It opens in Los Angeles, where three criminals, Ray, Pluto, and Fantasia, commit a string of brutal murders before heading south with a suitcase full of cocaine. The police trace their path to a small Arkansas town called Star City, where the local sheriff, Dale Hurricane Dixon, sees the case as his chance to prove himself. But when the fugitives arrive, the story pivots from a chase to a reckoning. Fantasia, whose real name is Lila, grew up in Star City and shares a past with Dixon that includes a son she never told him about. What begins as a procedural unfolds into a collision between violence, memory, and the weight of choices that never really disappear. Behind the camera, Carl Franklin was directing his first major feature, working from a script by Billy Bob Thornton and Tom Epperson that studios initially dismissed as too violent and too dark for release. Cinda Williams' portrayal of Fantasia came from deep personal places. Franklin had her spend time alone in rural Arkansas to absorb the isolation her character carries. She later said she left the shoot feeling like she had lived someone else's trauma. Bill Paxton, meanwhile, took the role of his career, arriving weeks before filming to study real small-town officers, learning their rhythms and insecurities. He treated Dixon not as a caricature, but as a man trying to live up to his own myth, and the quiet sadness he brought to the ending stunned audiences, who expected a simple action climax. When the film was nearly sent straight to video, a handful of critics championed it. Siskel and Ebert's praise alone gave it the push it needed. Those last-minute screenings turned one false move into one of the great surprises of the 1990s, a film that used crime and tragedy to expose the fragile humanity beneath American heroism. Bound takes the skeleton of a classic mob thriller and rebuilds it into something sharp, sensual, and fearless. The story unfolds inside a Chicago apartment complex, where Violet, the glamorous girlfriend of a mob money launderer named Caesar, starts an affair with Corky, the tough ex-con working next door. What begins as attraction becomes conspiracy when Violet overhears Caesar's crew kill a man and decides she's done living under their control. Together, she and Corky plan to steal $2 million of mob cash and make Caesar take the fall. Their scheme is carefully timed and brilliantly executed, until paranoia, greed, and sheer bad luck push everything toward disaster. Caesar snaps, turning on Violet in a violent showdown that leaves him dead and the women free to escape together. Directed by the Wachowskis before The Matrix made them famous, the film was shot almost entirely in tight interiors to build tension and intimacy. Gina Gershon and Jennifer Tilly approached their roles with extraordinary preparation, working closely with sex scene choreographer Susie Bright to create a relationship that felt genuine rather than sensational. They built real trust off-screen, rehearsing not just lines but movement, so that every gesture in the film feels charged with both danger and affection. Joe Pantoliano, playing Caesar, took his character's unraveling to extremes, locking himself alone for hours to summon the paranoia that defines the film's second half. Crew members recalled that his improvised rants were so convincing they sometimes forgot he was acting. Upon release, Bound sparked controversy over its explicit content and same-sex romance, facing censorship in several countries and resistance from advertisers. Yet critics quickly recognized its intelligence and precision, a stylized noir that reimagined gender roles without losing an ounce of suspense. Its impact stretched far beyond the box office, proving that a low-budget thriller led by two women could outsmart the system and rewrite the rules of the genre. The hand that rocks the cradle turns domestic safety into a psychological minefield, following Claire Bartel, a Seattle housewife whose life unravels after she reports her obstetrician, Dr. Victor Mott, for sexual assault. The scandal drives him to suicide, and his pregnant widow, Peyton, suffers a miscarriage. Destitute and vengeful, she reinvents herself as Peyton Flanders and infiltrates Claire's home as a nanny, executing a slow, methodical revenge that includes secretly breastfeeding baby Joey to bond him to her, gaslighting Claire, and framing the mentally disabled handyman Solomon for molestation. Rebecca De Mornay originally auditioned to play Claire, while Annabella Sciorra tried out for Peyton, but the filmmakers switched the roles after realizing De Mornay's icy intensity perfectly fit the villain. The swap transformed the film's energy, giving it that unforgettable edge where warmth meets menace. De Mornay immersed herself so deeply in Peyton's psyche that she often stayed in character between takes, making the set tense and her co-stars visibly uncomfortable during violent scenes, performed with chilling commitment. Kevin Spacey was nearly cast as Michael Bartel before Matt McCoy landed the role, a shift that kept the tone sympathetic rather than sinister. Had Spacey played the husband, the film might have tilted darker, but McCoy's calm presence allowed Peyton's manipulations to dominate the emotional center. The breastfeeding subplot sparked controversy worldwide, with broadcasters censoring scenes over cultural taboos. Yet that imagery, the violation of maternal trust, gave the movie its lasting power. Against expectations, the thriller became a 1992 box office sensation, grossing around $140 million on an $11.9 million budget, dominating home rentals and cementing its status as one of the decade's most unsettling domestic thrillers. The Big Lebowski transforms a hard-boiled mystery into a stoner odyssey through Los Angeles absurdity. It follows Jeffrey the Dude Lebowski, an unemployed bowler mistaken for a millionaire with the same name. After thugs ruin his rug while demanding ransom money from the wrong man, the dude sets out for compensation, aided by volatile Vietnam vet Walter and spaced-out Donnie. Their investigation leads through porn producers, nihilists, avant-garde artists, and a missing briefcase, spinning a web of chaos that turns into a weirdly zen reflection on confusion and consequence. Jeff Bridges became the dude by ritual. Before each scene, he'd ask the Coen brothers if the dude was stoned. They'd say yes, and he'd rub his eyes to make them bloodshot, creating that perfect glazed authenticity. The Coens had first offered the part to Mel Gibson, who didn't click with the script's offbeat rhythm. Bridges' mellow rhythm and intuitive humor instead gave life to a character who embodied countercultural detachment and unlikely wisdom. On set, the Coens encouraged improvisation, keeping the tone as unpredictable as the dude himself. John Goodman improvised the infamous human paraquat insult, an absurd reference to herbicide that fit Walter's unhinged bravado perfectly. That spontaneity fueled the movie's energy, where every conversation feels like a rambling cosmic joke that somehow fits together. With roughly 260 F-bombs, television edits became hilariously infamous, spawning the censored line, "Do you see what happens when you find a stranger in the Alps?" A surreal phrase that became its own meme. Though divisive on release, the film's offbeat humor, idiosyncratic rhythm, and unforgettable characters helped The Big Lebowski evolve into one of the most beloved cult classics of modern cinema.